Well, welcome to the West Sports Show, a special AFL Origin edition. I am Glen Quartermain. With me is Craig O'Donoghue. How are you, Cod? You excited?
It's a Tuesday, and normally, when we were growing up, Tuesday would be when State of Origin would be on. We'd be coming home from school to watch the game. Some people would be leaving school early to get to the game. So, yeah, this is where we start to really build. The players will arrive tomorrow, and then we really build into this match.
Of course, you and I were watching it from Victoria.
Yes.
Probably with big V jumpers on. All the kids used to wag school over here, and a few of us, I think, might have taken some time off over there to watch it as well. Great rivalries. Look, I love this idea. I love what we're doing. It's a sellout. I just want to see two great Aussie words, fair dinkum. I want to see some aggression very early in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. We've heard everyone talk it up as this is fair dinkum. So Glen told the players last week during a Zoom call that they were playing for sheep stations. Chris Scott told the Victorian players, if there's anyone in here who just thinks it's going to be an exhibition game, get out. So the players have all been told that it's time to have a crack. And now what I want to see is teammates in the AFL going at it in this game early. So I want to see Rory Lobb run down into the forward line for Victoria as a West Australian defender and have a crack at Sam Darcy before the bounce. Their teammates during the week, mate against mate, state against state, now's the time.
Caleb Sarong, Luke Jackson, for example.
Yes, perfect example.
Let's show a bit.
Example. There's a really good example. When you talk about representative sport, and it's great whether it's Olympic sport, national sport, State of Origin, there's a great example back in the 2008 Olympics where America had failed at the 2004 Olympics, and they put together what's now known as the Redeem Team. Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, megastars all playing for the US. And Kobe Bryant was with the Lakers, and Pau Gasol from Spain was also with the Lakers. And Kobe stood up in the United States team meeting and said, first play of the game, I'm taking him out. And LeBron looked at him and went, no, you're not. He's a Lakers teammate. He said, first play of the game, he's mine. And the first play of the game, Kobe ran through Pau Gasol and just flattened him. And everyone in the American team went, whoa, we're fair dinkum. Well, no, they wouldn't have said fair dinkum, but they said, we're on. And Spain went, hang on, what's going on here? And that was the moment which made sure that America won that Olympic gold medal. And that's what either team who's prepared to do that will win this game.
I'll throw another code at you, Cod, the NRL. So, of course, founded in Western Australia on a Tuesday afternoon in 1977 in October by Leon Larkin from the Subiaco Football Club, their marketing guru, and it was hot. But 3 years after that, after it had become a raging success in Australian rules football, the NRL decided to introduce it. And there's a little bit of questioning about, okay, are they really going to hit each other hard? The example you just used. There was a lot of enmity across borders, as there always is between New South Wales and Queensland. But within the opening minutes, Queensland great Arthur Beetson just ran straight through his Parramatta Eels teammate Mick Cronin, and then it took on the catch cry, state v state, mate v mate, and he just showed, no, this is fair dinkum. So, I'm not suggesting anyone run through anyone and knock them out, but I want to see some really sustained aggression early. And I think just getting the read of particularly the WA squad, I think they want to make a bit of a statement early and show them that they're fair dinkum.
Well, I think it's the only way WA can win. So when you look at the numbers, there are 16 top 20 picks in the Victorian team. There's only 12 from WA. There's 2 number 1 picks in Victoria, 2 number 2 picks in Victoria, 3 number 3 picks, and only 3 players picked beyond pick 50. So they are a stacked team. Now, when you say that, I mean, Shea Bolton is better than a pick 29, and Chad Warner is better than a pick 39. Jake Waterman is much better than a pick 77. But it's really important that WA looks at the amount of talent that Victoria has and says, well, we're going to show you that we're not intimidated by your talent. And puts pressure on Victoria in different ways because they've got so many midfielders in there. Well, can those midfielders play forward? Can those midfielders play back for Victoria? The WA team looks really balanced. So those small forwards who can tackle have to tackle with aggression. And when the big stars from Victoria get the footy, the Nick Dacos's and Marcus Bonampelli, they've got to be brought to ground. They've got to be those tackles have to really stick. So the aggression from WA and the home crowd advantage, that will be what will give them a chance to take on the ridiculous skill of Victoria.
Get the crowd behind them. So that first 77 game, 6-5 to zip in the first quarter, WA versus Victoria. You look at it, you mentioned Dacos, McCluggage, Ed Richards, Zach Butters, Noah Anderson, Matt Morale, Zach Merritt, Caleb Sarong. It's a stacked midfield. But then you look at some other stats and you look at 18 premiership players out in the field in these two squads. WA has 11 for 19 flags, Vic 7 for 10. So you can sort of use stats how you like. There's no question this Victorian side bats really deep, particularly in the midfield. But, I mean, it's not wanting for anything, the WA lineup either. I mean, you mentioned Bolton. There's Patrick Cripps and Chad Warner, two of the great players of the competition. So Luke Jackson, we'll see a bit of him as a midfielder, hopefully, more full-time midfielder, which is what Freo looks to be planning for this year. So Jager O'Meara.
There's no genuine small forward in that Victorian team, and there are multiple small forwards in the WA team.
Because Toby Green's more of a sort of a...
Takes marks.
Yeah.
So when you look at grand final day in recent years, it's been the smalls who have done the damage, and it was certainly the smalls who did the damage for the Indigenous All-Stars last year. So it's going to be a 30-degree day. It's going to be the first time these guys have had any real competition all season. So they're going to drop marks. There's going to be mistakes. They're going to miss targets. Balls are going to hit the ground. And when the smalls then are able to run around like we saw last year in the preseason, then who knows? WA's smalls could really take this game on.
For over a century, Cod, Sydney Kidman stood for cattle, courage and country, a man who built his life on the strength of the land and the people who worked it. Today, Kidman carries that legacy forward with boots and clothing designed for resilience and authenticity. Each Kidman piece reflects the rugged elegance of the Australian landscape, made to be lived in. Their boots are crafted from premium cow yearling leather with Goodyear welt construction and a trampoline core insole for all-day comfort and endurance. It's just a better boot. Explore the collection today at kidman.com. One of the interesting points about this Origin game, and I'll give you an example. I was in Melbourne last week on a golf trip with my old mates from Melbourne, and they're going to need some convincing whether Origin is, whether they're behind it or not, but they're all going to be watching it. Timing is everything, and I think speaking to Graham Moss yesterday at the launch of the medal in his honour, he thinks that because it died a sort of a natural death early because of the creation of the national competition. There wasn't the rivalry, but interstate rivalry was replaced by club. But with the passage of time now, I think there's so many players from so many states at so many different clubs across the competition that I think the timing is right now to see whether this can work again. It was only going to work in the preseason. It can't work in any other time of year. They're doing it the right way in that if clubs ask players to be managed, to have managed minutes, I think they have to honour that. To a certain extent, they have to.
That's what would happen anyway. 25 blokes in each team.
Yeah, so they're going to be able to do that.
It's going to be that, no matter what time of year it is.
But I think more than anything, for me, we're at that stage. You can just feel it in the air, you can smell it. There's hunger. We're through the cricket season, and people just want some footy now. I think it's the perfect way to launch into a new season, and it could possibly happen each year. I think it could work, provided. It needs to be a good game, which is we go back to our original point. Let's show a bit of aggression out there.
Yeah, and I think it's really, from a WA perspective, it's really, really important from a long-term position that WA is a strong and powerful team. If you look at the last 4 national drafts, top 10 picks, 26 of them have been Victorian, only 3 have been West Australian. That's out of 4 drafts. Jacob Farrow joined Essendon last year at pick 10 from West Perth. Next West Australian was Sam Swaddling at pick 37. West Coast's 1994 flag team had 20 West Australians in it, and the 1991 WA team had 14 Eagles, which smashed Victoria. So Freo and West Coast need WA footy to be strong so they can recruit from locally rather than having to pay players more to stay in WA. If blokes are being recruited from here, it costs them less money from a salary cap perspective. So that's really important. So if WA can produce and inspire the next wave of kids, that's a crucial element of it. I also think it's important that Victorians, there's a smugness about Victorian footy that they are the home of footy. They always say the grand final is played in Victoria. This game isn't being played in Victoria, but they've got all these stars and all that sort of stuff. The big V matters, all the stuff that we hear from Victoria all the time. The reason why State of Origin worked was because WA beat Victoria in the first game. And straight away they went, hang on, what's happened here? when in those games against South Australia and Victoria. Hang on, Victoria didn't like losing. When New South Wales beat Victoria and then Victoria came over here and won a game and Teddy Whitten gave we stuck it right up them. It was because Victoria had lost multiple games in a row and there was a fear factor around them then. So it needs to be WA and SA knocking off Victoria or playing really, really well in home games against Victoria and making the Victorian fans say, we want the game back in our state. And then it builds the real rivalry and the real momentum.
Chris Scott doesn't like losing, but it almost feels like Victoria has to lose a close game in WA for it to work.
Yeah, or be ridiculously close where everyone's
in the last quarter.
Yeah, everyone's expecting Victoria to win this. But if they're 4 goals down at one point in the game, then they have to surge home and win. That changes everything. And Chris Scott is competitive at everything. And I spoke to Harry Taylor yesterday, and he said, the fact that Chris Scott hasn't been at Geelong for most of the pre-season because he's preparing for the Victorian game shows how much he wants to actually win this damn game.
You mentioned Harry Taylor. So a lot of these players now who will be debuting in an Origin game played state footy, wore the state jumper with pride at 16s, 18s level, and it meant something to them because they hadn't yet entered the AFL competition. It really meant something for them. I really hope – this is a great opportunity for players for something else to mean something to them. And I think if they get this right, and they're throwing every resource at it.
They are.
Every resource.
During Nat Fyfe's career and during Matthew Pavlich's career, they were so focused on winning flags, right? And it was all about Fremantle. Now they've retired. I wonder if Pavlich would look back and go, geez, I wish I would have played for South Australia.
South Australia, yeah.
I wonder if I'd played in a carnival for South Australia or we'd won a trophy for South Australia, whether or not there'd be a different feeling, a hole in his body that maybe had been filled a little bit. Or Nat Fyfe, if he did it for Australia, he was the best player for Australia in an international rules series. So would these blokes, when they finish their careers, look back on it as those guys who played in the 70s and 80s, look back and go, how amazing it was when you played for Victoria. Robbie Flower style, and Dale Waitman late in his career, even though he had success early, and these guys who were playing, Trevor Barker, another example, guys who didn't necessarily have the success, but when they played for their state, they went, oh my God, that means something. So it's hard to win a flag. So if you can then be part of the best teams and play with the blokes that you look up to and win something with them, I think it would absolutely be something they'd reflect on and go, that meant a hell of a lot.
It's interesting, talking to Dean Cox a few weeks ago, he didn't get to play Origin football. He played in a dream team. I think it was 1998.
2008.
1998, too early. But he actually got a lot out of it in terms of just spending a few days with elite players from other clubs, having a look at their preparation, having a look about how they went about everyday business, what they ate, all of that sort of stuff. He had plenty of teammates who would have been very professional, but he just found that really interesting, and it was a big learning acceleration for him, he thought. So I reckon they're going to get plenty out of it.
You know what else will be interesting in terms of that? The conversations. So February 14th is Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day is the day of the game. Valentine's Day is Tom Barris's 1-year wedding anniversary.
It is too.
Last year, that wedding was held around the same time as the Indigenous All-Stars, and Sam Mitchell just happened to be in town helping to coach those Indigenous All-Stars. And now Sam Mitchell is part of the Victorian team.
Do you reckon he'll be having another word to Zach Merritt, for example?
He might have a word to Zach Merritt. He might have a word to a lot of players. But Justin Longmuir will be there for the West Australian team as an assistant coach. He might have a word to Chad Warner. He might have another word to Cosy Pickett. He might have a word to Mitch Georgiades, who's out of contract in 2027. Chad Warner out of contract 2027. Trent Rivers out of contract 2027. Lawson Humphreys out of contract 2028. Plenty of amount of
Cosy might be harder to extract.
He will be harder.
A bit longer term. But
that's something that players can. There are a lot of Dockers players involved in this, and a coach. This is a good opportunity for those blokes to build rapport with guys and say, hey, come home and play with us. There will be a bit of that going on in the future after relationships get built in these games of blokes going, I wouldn't mind playing with that guy, or I wouldn't mind playing with that coach, because this is a genuine chance to build a rapport. And it's a bit of a side story from what will happen. We'll see into the future that relationships that were built over this weekend will eventually lead to at least a couple of players playing with each other or playing for a coach.
So I mentioned it before, the Graham Moss Medal presented to the best West Australian player, the E.J. Whitten Medal presented to the best Victorian player. Those medals will be voted on collaboratively, so it won't be a 3-2-1. They'll just decide by the coach, by the assistant coach, and by the chairman of selectors of each team. They'll be playing for the Graham Polly Farmer Perpetual Cup, which is between the cup presented to the winning team between WA and Victoria, presented by Polly's daughter, Kim. So,
which is awesome.
And Polly, of course, coached that first WA team in 1977, which is actually his last game as a coach at the elite level. So, and of course, we know how decorated he was as a player for Western Australia. It's funny, talking to Graham Moss yesterday again, and we know Polly played a couple of games for Victoria pre-Origin when they had those. When you were from Western Australia, you played in the VFL. You played for the Big V. When you look back, you think it's pretty ridiculous when you think about it at the time.
Yeah, well, it's what happens now, isn't it? The Waffle plays the Sandful and the VFL. So that was literally what it was at the time. But it is crazy to think that no one until 1977 came up with the idea that you just play for the place you were from.
Mm. It makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. I do love the fact that you compare it to the Brownlow, you compare it to the Norm Smith, you compare it to the Glendinning Allen medal, or all of the medals that we have throughout the season, which are voted on by a panel of experts from who are watching from the grandstands. I do love that these ones are decided by the coach, the assistant coach, and the chairman of selectors. Like the people who have picked the team, putting it out there and going, we're recognising you, and we are saying you are the best player based on what we've seen now. Not on the replay, not on anything we've heard the next day. Right now, we're saying you're our best player. And I think that's a massive way to really hand over the honour on the day that those blokes are the ones who are picking it.
And there's plenty of contenders. There's 28 All-Australians out there. Victoria has 18, WA has 10. But the total Blazer count is 53 to 15 in Victorians' favour.
Amazing, isn't it?
Isn't it? So, I mean, what's your gut feel? Who wins?
Our gut feel is Victoria wins.
Yeah.
I think the rotations of their midfield, if everyone... So Harry Taylor told me yesterday, Harry Taylor is the high performance manager. He will be on the bench looking after rotations for WA. And he said based on the maths and the information that he has, most players will play about 80% game time, which is fairly similar for what most midfielders would in a home and away game anyway. But if you're rotating the number of midfielders that Victoria have through that centre square, I think over time throughout the game, WA isn't going to have their best guys in there. Victoria will always have a best midfield possible based on what they have. So once they win the footy and get it forward, I think that will be what will give them the edge throughout the game. Just weight of numbers, the longer you play, the harder it's going to be to match them.
You say that, and I tend to agree with you, but you look at the likely WA defence, Jordan Clark, Tom Barrass, Sam Taylor, some great players there. And then you look at Patrick Dangerfield, Sam Darcy, Marcus Bonampelli, Ben King. This game could be, if that forward line gets opportunity, it's going to be pretty hard to stop. It's going to be pretty hard for that WA defence.
It's just about weight of supply. It's going to be the big thing. As I do love the small forwards that WA has. I think the amount of pressure that they can put under.
Speed and the small forwards, I think, is a point of difference for WA.
Yeah, absolutely it is. So I think they've gone for speed deliberately. Victoria's gone for class. So the pressure that those small forwards can create, the tackling that they can create is going to be something that will allow a bit of a point of difference. There is more balance in terms of what players' natural roles are compared to Victoria's just got an all-out attacking team in there. There are some role players in the WA team which I think will really help them to play more like a normal footy match and allow the stars to be the stars and then potentially do some damage, locking down or at least focusing defensively on some of those Victorian big names.
Be sure to pick up your free 48-page AFL Origin Collector's Guide in the West Australian this Friday, a complete guide to this weekend's big game. This glossy magazine takes you inside football's greatest rivalry with all the highlights from every historic battle between WA and Victoria, star player profiles and much more. Cobb, when you look back at Origin history, give me one player who stands out to you for performance, sustained performance.
Sustained is harder for me because I didn't see enough of I didn't see any of the 70s and I didn't see most of the early 80s. The things that, it was more the games that I remember. As an Essendon supporter, I had Greg Anderson's number on my back because I'd seen him play State of Origin football before he arrived at Essendon. I remember watching Gary Ablett, doing crazy things in Victoria, Tony Lockett and Jason Dunstall in the same team.
Mm-hmm.
I remember learning about West Australian players who you'd never heard of and going, who the hell's that guy? Why isn't I'm looking forward to him coming to the VFL because we were living over there. Gary McIntosh in South Australia.
Always seemed to be just in and under and getting the footy.
Yeah, so the highlight of State of Origin footy for me was watching guys you'd never seen before and going, man, how good a player is he? And then hoping that you got to see them into the future. So that's how I reflect on the State of Origin footy, that it was like it was a learning process about the entire national football landscape. Whereas now this is going to be, we know who every single player is, and it's going to be exciting to see who can stand above those guys and say, I am an absolute megastar amongst megastars.
So my earliest memory, I remember the 77 game that was played, and as a Victorian, we're very disappointed getting beaten by 94 points over in Western Australia. But they played over at the MCG the following year in 78 and absolutely trounced WA. And I remember that specifically for Stephen Michael playing for Western Australia, because we'd heard so much about him. The player, even at that time, it was he may be going to play for Geelong. And I remember watching him. But when I look back at Origin, I remember Brian Peake going to full forward and kicking 7. But it's Gary Buckenara with a bit of Hawthorn bias. But he just always performed for Western Australia. He was a big game player for Hawthorn, but he just always seemed to be in the best 3 players. So for me, I think of Gary Buckenara.
That's a clear example of someone who did love playing for his state. You know what I would love to see, just thinking off the top of my head now, we have got rid of the sub rule, but I'd love a sub to be picked for these games from someone who's never played an AFL game. So you can pick someone from the Waffle, you can pick someone from the VFL, you could pick a draftee who.
Not a bad call.
So Willem Dersma could play for Victoria. To hark back to the days when you saw someone for the first time, and that bloke comes on just for the last quarter, and you see him for the first time, and everyone goes, "Who's this kid? We've never heard of him."
So you get one
player who's only going to play a quarter. They might play 15 minutes, which is what a lot of blokes might have at the time, where they're just thrown out, and your first exposure for them is in, we know this person is going to be really good into the future. Let's have a look at them, just because we haven't had the chance as a reflection on what state footy was, where you were sitting at home going, never heard of that guy, never seen that guy, but he's a star in his state. Or I wonder how good he could become.
Sounds like a Saturday column for you, Cod, and it also sounds like you've just given them a great idea at the AFL. I'd love to see it happen. Thanks for your time.
It should be a really good weekend. Really looking forward to it.
For more, head to thewest.com.au. And remember, you can watch or listen to this podcast on YouTube Music.